Welcome back, everybody. I am the Economancer. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of economics, public policy, cybernetics, and communal ontology. So, in today's episode, we're going to explore the fascinating intersection between the works of Daniel B. Klein's Knowledge and Coordination, a Liberal Interpretation, and Niklas Luhmann's Trust and Power. So, the idea here is to really understand, the basis for a communal ontology. So we're going to be highlighting the importance of things of like knowledge, coordination, trust, and power in shaping these social systems. I want you to join me as we delve into these two influential works and uncover the valuable insights for understanding the functioning of our social and economic world. And I also want to point out that looking at the community tab of the three series that I'm working on, Triple Helix got 0 hits. So probably not going to be doing any more of that. I might jump into it later on after an introduction into cybernetics because it'll at least have the foundation there for some of the mathematics. But it seems like it might bore some of you. It seems like there's a lot more emphasis on this communal ontology and a little bit on this introduction of cybernetics. When I'm done with an introduction to cybernetics, I'm going to be moving into Niklas Luhmann's introduction to systems theory. And this communal ontology will also build more into some of the orthodox theology I've been working on. So let's just start off with Knowledge and Coordination, a Liberal Interpretation by Daniel B. Klein. So this is a book that provides a fresh perspective on classical liberal economics. As many of you know, I consider myself something akin to classical liberal economics. So Klein, much like I do, or should I say I, much like him, however you want to put it, challenges some of the traditional assumptions held by many economists and offers a new way of understanding the role of knowledge and coordination in market economies. So Klein's primary argument is that classical liberal economics should not be solely focused on the pursuit of efficiency and the allocation of resources, which is typically the case in economic theories. Instead, he emphasizes the importance of knowledge and coordination as key factors in fostering economic growth and prosperity. In doing so, he highlights the critical role of individual freedom and voluntary exchange in promoting a well-functioning and dynamic economy. So Klein reinterprets these classical liberal economies and he centers it on the idea that knowledge is dispersed throughout society. So there is no central hub of knowledge, and that markets serve as a mechanism for coordinating this knowledge, so information transfer or communications. This idea was first introduced by Friedrich Hayek, and if you've watched my video on Hayek as a cybernetician, you can see that this makes a lot of sense. Klein builds on Hayek's concept of the knowledge problem by exploring how market processes facilitate the discovery, generation, and dissemination of this information. So in addition to the knowledge problem, Klein also addresses the issue of coordination, which he views as a key element of the functioning of a market economy. So coordination refers to the way in which actors such as buyers and sellers interact to make mutually beneficial exchanges. According to Klein, the ability of market participants to coordinate effectively relies on the presence of social institutions, such as property rights and the rule of law, which create an environment conducive to voluntary exchange and cooperation. Ultimately, Klein's liberal interpretation of classical economics highlights the importance of individual freedom, market processes, and social institutions in promoting economic growth and prosperity. By emphasizing the role of knowledge and coordination, he provides a more comprehensive understanding of how market economies function and offer valuable insights for policymakers and other economists. So now we're going to be looking into Luhmann and Trust and Power. So I'm not going to give a full breakdown of Luhmann's Trust and Power because there's a lot that gets packed into his work, but I'm going to go over some key insights here. So in Trust and Power, he employs the concept of a generalized media of communication in order to tackle the problem of complexity and to designate devices additional to everyday language, devices which are symbolically generalized codes of selection, the function of which is to provide the capacity for intersubjective transmissions of acts of selection over the shorter or longer chains, such as truth, love, power, money. These are all outstanding examples of this kind of device which has evolved successfully in our society. Through the generalizing capacity of such media, this structures our expectations and patterns of motivation are formed based on these expectations, which make it possible for selections made by one individual to be relevant to another in the sense that he is aware of them, and he also does not treat them as an open question, but he performs his selection as consequences of them. So let me try to break this down. We have this generalized media of communication, right? This is going to tackle the problem of complexity. So again, complexity is this increasing amount of variety. So if I have the freedom to do anything I want, there has to be constraints, or else I'm stuck in this place of nihilism because I just don't know what to do. So we have communication tackles this problem through these generalized medium of communications. So money reduces my choices, right? And you think, well, okay, well, this is like the general idea in economics. You have a budget constraint. It constrains your choices to how much money you have. That is a fundamental property of this symbolic generalized code of selection. It constrains the amount of choices that you're allowed to have. By constraining those, you set up your expectations for what you can and cannot buy or what you can and cannot do. It sets up patterns of motivation, whether you want more money, more leisure, etc. So all of this makes it possible for us to select stuff as one individual, and it allows that selection to be relevant to all of the other people that are also making selections, and it allows it to be consequential to them. So these codes of selection can be indeed associated with other factors such as moral coding, which is a fundamental property here. Luhmann argues that these codes encompass various domains of social life, including, again, truth, love, power, money, and morality. These domains represent different spheres of social interactions and have their own specific codes that guide and shape behavior. So let's talk about the domain of morality. So if there are moral codes that dictate what is considered right or wrong or ethical or unethical, then we have to see that these codes influence individuals' decision-making processes and help establish these shared expectations and patterns of behavior with a social system. So if we're actually trying to integrate Knowledge and Coordination, a liberal interpretation by Daniel Klein, and Niklas Luhmann's Trust and Power, we both have to understand, well, they both have to provide important insights and into the functioning of the social system. And so if we're looking at this and trying to come up with a way to get a communal ontology based on these two works, we need to explore the connections between them. So we have coordination, knowledge, trust, and power. We look at Klein's work, we understand that coordination plays a crucial role in our social environment as it allows for the smooth functioning of market economics. Coordination relies on the existence of social institutions that support voluntary exchange and cooperation. So at this core of coordination lies the dispersed knowledge that individuals possess, which is brought to you by market processes to foster this economic growth and prosperity. Now, when we look at Luhmann's Trust and Power, we're going to see the mechanisms that help establish and maintain that social order, such as trust. According to Luhmann, is a fundamental aspect of social systems that enables the coordination among individuals. Trust reduces the complexity in a social interaction by allowing individuals to rely on the actions and decisions of others without needing to know or control every detail. In this sense, trust acts as a lubricant for coordination and for the market itself. The market could not exist without trust. You can think of money. Money is a thing of trust. If we don't have trust in the money, then we can't have trust in one another. If I am going to give you money for something, I expect that something to be equal in that money. And I expect there be trust in that money, that you would take that money, that you would use that money, that you can also continue down this line. Luhmann makes it clear that when we're thinking of trust, there's really the trust that we build up over time, and then there's trust that we're basically inculcated with, that you can't run away from this trust. Like money is one of those things that you can't actually run away from the trust that you put in money. If you just didn't trust it, then how would you exchange and trade? You can try to move into an inefficient like bartering system, but that's not going to be very helpful for you, especially if you're trying to coordinate at a communal level. Okay. Then we're going to look at power. Power is another mechanism discussed by Luhmann, which influences social order. So power is the capacity to compel or influence others to act in a certain way, often in the context of a hierarchical relationship. While trust can promote coordination by fostering cooperation and interdependence, power can also lead to coordination through enforcement or coercion. Again, it makes no sense to have, and this goes back to what Klein was talking about on these institutions. You have to have some type of centralizing authority that can force or coerce people to act in a certain way. That doesn't mean that you need an authoritarian government to control everything. It just means that you have to have these institutions with some institutional power to set up and allow for the coordination, cooperation of people. And so if we're really focusing on this interplay between knowledge, coordination, trust, and power in shaping social systems, we see an ontology. Knowledge is dispersed among individuals, and coordination emerges through the voluntary exchange of this knowledge and communication and information. Trust and power act as mechanisms of social order. They act as facilitators of this coordination and knowledge dispersion. So if we're trying to build this up a little bit more on this community ontology, the role of social institutions in fostering trust and enabling coordination, social institutions such as property rights, which aren't necessary all the time, the rule of law, create an environment that allows for voluntary exchange and cooperation. They also contribute to building trust among individuals by providing a stable framework for interactions. Going back to what I said on trust, you're either inculcated in trust or trust is a property of the past manipulating the future. So the balance between trust and power in promoting coordination, we can see that trust fosters voluntary coordination through cooperation and interdependence. Power can be used to enforce that coordination. It is essential to consider the appropriate balance between trust and power in different social contexts. So if you have an over-reliance on power, this may undermine the trust and hinder the effective coordination. You can actually see this in countries with high levels of corruption or authoritarian. You can see that the over-reliance on power undermines the trust of the social system itself. Well, people don't trust their government. People don't trust one another because all they see is the corruption that undermines whether or not I can actually trade with you. Because if I trade with you and you screw me over because you're corrupt, then I can't place trust in you. And then you can just force me to trust you through force, through power, but that doesn't actually make this exchange good. So we see this dynamic nature of a communal ontology. So the relationships between knowledge, coordination, trust, and power, they're not static, but they're constantly evolving. This communal ontology needs to account for the adaptive and transformative nature of social systems as they respond to changes in their environment and in the knowledge and preferences of individuals, which is why I don't think socialism or communism or whatever you want to have, non-capitalistic or non-free market-based social systems are very good at responding to these changes and adaptations in the market. And I think that's why capitalism and free market economics has been so successful in setting up a communal ontology, especially when we look at the work of Adam Smith and some of the other stuff that I built earlier on intersubjectivity. So if we're integrating these ideas from Klein's knowledge and coordination and Luhmann's trust and power, we can understand how to build a comprehensive communal ontology that emphasizes the importance of knowledge, coordination, trust, and power in shaping the functioning of the social system itself. So to kind of lay out like the bare bones of what a good ontology, good communal ontology would look like, we need to understand that communication plays a vital role in enabling the sharing and coordination of this knowledge. Communication channels allow for the transmission of information, which can lead to a development of trust and cooperation among individuals. Different forms of communication, such as verbal, written, or digital, can shape the way knowledge is shared and coordinated within the social system. We're seeing this now. We're seeing this disaggregation of people away from the community because we're more on the internet now. But we're also seeing these internet communities, such as the one that I'm a part of, Telosbound, building this high level of communication and knowledge sharing and coordination that doesn't necessarily need all of the redundancy associated with face-to-face context. So, social norms and values. So, the communal ontology has to account for the influence of social norms and values on trust, power, and coordination. If we look at social norms, we see that they are shared expectations about appropriate behavior. While these values reflect what a society deems important, these norms and values can shape the way individuals use trust and power to coordinate their actions as they guide decision making and promote a sense of shared identity, which that solidarity is something we'll eventually work on with Emil Durkheim. But that solidarity is what helps that sharing of communications. Then we can look at networks and relationships. We have social networks and relationships. They also have a significant impact on how we coordinate, on our trust, and on our power. If you have strong relationships among individuals, we know that that can facilitate the flow of knowledge and promote trust, while dense social networks can increase the opportunities for coordination. So the more together you are in your social network, the more opportunity you have for this coordination. So the structure of these networks can influence the distribution of power, with centralized networks potentially leading to a concentration of power and more egalitarian networks supporting more distributed power structures. And that isn't to say that one is better than the other, because I don't think that they're necessarily mutually exclusive. But we have to understand that you need some centralization in the networks, and that you also have to have more egalitarian networks, because you want to distribute those power structures so that they don't become overbearing and the social system has an over reliance on that. All right, here's one that's probably going to aggravate some people a little bit more on the right. You need cultural diversity. What does that do? So cultural diversity adds complexity to the communal ontology, as it introduces variations in the way knowledge, coordination, trust, and power are understood and enacted. We live in a global society at this point. Trying to focus on just the national society misses all of the beauty and the integrated knowledge that comes from these other cultural systems. So if you have these diverse cultural backgrounds, these lead to different perspectives and social norms, values, and communication styles, which may affect the establishment of trust and the exercise of power. But a communal ontology should be flexible and adaptive to accommodating different cultural contexts and promoting inclusivity. If you think about it from the Orthodox Church perspective, you have the Russian Orthodox Church, you have the American Orthodox Church, you have the Greek Orthodox Church. They each get to hold on to their own cultural relativism while maintaining being one in the church. This is a fundamental property of orthodoxy that I think a lot of other Christianity misses, and it shows the beauty of it, because you can integrate these at any point in time. You can go from one type of orthodox, I shouldn't say type, hold on, you can go to one nationalistic based orthodox to another, and you're going to be there in the divine liturgy, and you're not going to miss a beat. You may not know what's going on in the words, and there may be a few different ritualistic practices that aren't the same, but for the most part, you're going to be there, and it's going to be something that ties and binds everyone together. That orthodoxy is what creates that solidarity. That's being in the body of Christ is what creates that binding agreement on what it is to be orthodoxy. Just because you have a different culture doesn't mean you're necessarily removed from it. Conflict resolution, which I think is super important. In any socialism, or any social system, conflicts may arise due to competing interests, values, or perceptions. We understand that conflict theory does have something to say about the nature of society. So a communal ontology should incorporate mechanisms for conflict resolution that foster dialogue, negotiation, and compromise while respecting the importance of trust and power dynamics. These mechanisms can help maintain the social cohesion and ensure that coordination continues to function effectively despite the conflicts. Again, this is consensus over conflict. So if we're looking at how we add these additional elements in, we can see that through this communal ontology, we create a more comprehensive understanding of how social systems function and evolve. We see the interplay of knowledge, coordination, trust, power, communication, social norms, networks, cultural diversity, and conflict resolution, how these shape the dynamics of the social system and influence their capacity for growth, adaptation, and resilience. So with this expanded communal ontology, we can provide valuable insights to just policymakers, researchers, practitioners working to promote social well-being and sustainable development. And we can also understand the need for the church in our society, because it helps drive all of this through. You have that solidarity. You are in the body of Christ. Even though there are conflicts arise, there's conflict resolution through like this synodal existence for the church. And so all of this leads you to understand that for a communal ontology, there has to be these dynamics that are taken into account. And we have to look at the work of individuals like Daniel Klein. We have to look at the work of individuals like Niklas Luhmann. And we see how we can integrate their work into orthodoxy, how we can integrate their work into public policy, how we can integrate their work into economics and cybernetics. And all of this works together into making the world, hopefully, in my opinion, a better place through understanding coordination, knowledge spillovers, knowledge distribution, what trust is, how trust functions, what power is, how power functions in our society. So with that, I want to thank you for watching. I am the Economancer. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more content on economics, public policy, cybernetics, theology. Until next time, keep exploring these crazy worlds. Have a good one.